Today I'm going to go over some common mistakes when it comes to drawing realistic fur in this do's and don'ts fur tutorial. The first common mistake that people make when drawing fur is making strokes too uniform. When you draw your lines too straight and parallel to one another, you give the fur a very stiff look rather than a natural flowy and furry look like fur actually has. So what you want to do is make irregular strokes because fur doesn't grow in perfectly straight lines. It grows in slightly different directions. The second common mistake people tend to make is not using correct values. Drawing the fur too light and with very little shadows or dark hairs, or drawing it too dark and not giving it enough light areas. This gives the fur an unnatural, underexposed, or overexposed appearance and limits the necessary value scale for something to look realistic. It is important for the values to be very accurate in order for something to look realistic. What you should do is start off with a light shade and slowly work your way to darker where it needs to be darker. And make sure you use your darkest shade in your drawing because it's important to have a balance of all values. Once you've got it to where you think it needs to be, take a break and then come back and reassess your values to determine if you need to adjust anything to be lighter or darker. This is a lot easier to learn how to do when you're using a reference photo to draw from. The third common mistake is what I like to call narrow focusing, thinking of fur for all the little hairs it actually is instead of what you are seeing. Because when we get caught up thinking about the subjects, we assume that we know how to draw it or what it looks like. Going to that caveman mindset, for example, thinking of the differences that makes a flower pot and a chair, a general shape it is that truly makes it the definition of the word in our mind. When it comes to drawing fur, or even other subjects as well, not just fur, it is important to think of what you're drawing from an out-of-the-box perspective. Think about the texture of the fur. Isolate a particular area and try to think, how can I copy that texture and make my drawing look like that? Drawing is a lot of asking this very question and trying to copy an effect instead of thinking about the literal subject. So try to think of ways you can copy a texture and the values instead of what it actually is. The fourth common mistake is not incorporating proportions and anatomy of a subject. Many times people get caught up in trying to get the fur to look right and lose track of the animal's anatomy that is under the fur, the bone and muscle structure, or where exactly the jawline ends and the body begins. When you don't get these things right, it makes the animal look either like a big fluff ball or too bony, depending if you are too harsh with fur transitions across the subject. What you should do is make sure to sketch out your subject well before you begin filling in the details. Double check to make sure it's proportionate and accurate as possible. You can even use what is called a proportional divider tool to check your proportions, and also be sure to check through the drawing process as well, not just in the beginning, because we all make mistakes through the drawing process. You can learn more tips on drawing fur from this top right video, and follow me on Instagram and Facebook so you don't miss anything, as well as being updated with my latest artworks. Thank you for watching. See you next time.